And you're live on Joy 99.7 FM. This is Ghana Connect. My name is Evans Mensah. And I'm pretty sure that if you haven't noticed yet, you certainly aren't in Ghana. Because in the last few weeks, we've been treated to an avalanche of promises. Anything from legalization of Okada to an airport in Cape Coast to students not needing guarantors anymore. And of course, Mesa Yerega promising that he will sleep in a cell just to make a point to his appointees if he's elected that he will not tolerate corruption. That is his version of zero tolerance for corruption, by the way. And so I'm just wondering, in the midst of all that back and forth about promises, the avalanche that we are being treated to, how are you making sense of all that? Are you getting convinced? And how are you making decisions based on what you hear? Are you treating it with skepticism, or you believe what the politicians are promising you? Let's get a sense of what we've been hearing so far, at least from the two main political parties.
Okada is a reality. It has come to stay. You can't stop it. And so I have suggested, and I say when we come into office, we'll legalize Okada, but we'll regulate it.
We told the people of Ghana that we are going to do three broad things. We are going to stabilize the economy, we are going to reduce the suffering of our people, and we are going to transform this economy into a modern, prosperous economy. This was our contract with the people of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, what a difference 3 years of good, effective leadership can make in a country. Because after 3 years in office, just 3 years, we can say without any shadow of a doubt that we have fulfilled at least 72% of the promises that we made to the people of Ghana. And listen carefully, because some people didn't listen carefully. We have either delivered completely, or we are delivering on 72%.
We're going to inject money into infrastructural development again, because that will involve the construction industry, engineering, and so on and so forth. And so it will bring a lot of artisans and everybody back into work. We're looking at what I call the big push, the big infrastructural push. And that's going to be an injection of about $10 billion to dualize our roads, to complete the 200 senior secondary schools, to finish all the hospitals that we were building, to do bridges, in order to open up the country and all that. So there's going to be an injection of $10 billion. And we believe that that should allow the engineering sector and the construction sector, the cement sector, building material sector, to create at least, 300 to 400,000 jobs.
Effective 2021, small businesses will be exempted completely from corporate income tax. And that means all our small corner businesses, shops and others will be exempted from paying corporate income tax. Corporate income tax for medium-sized companies will be reduced from the current 25% to 15%.
For the people of Cape Coast, I have good news for you. We are building a new harbor in Cape Coast and a new airport in Cape Coast. It is very critical that we do that. An airport makes a lot of sense in Cape Coast. So we have a major promise, a policy initiative, which will say that all tertiary students, except teacher and nursing trainees who will be on allowances, but all tertiary students will now be able to get the option to obtain a student loan without the requirement of a guarantor. You should vote for for Nana so that he will provide the leadership of service to deliver on our promises, the leadership of service to protect our progress, and the leadership of service to transform Ghana for all.
If I want to be sincere with you, and Ghanaians believe that we should stop recycling NDC and MPP, and Ghanaians are yearning for a change and want a change, I will get 77%.
But in reality, what do you think with the situation?
I just told you the situation. In reality, If everybody says that they want to waste their vote, simultaneously they are wasting their vote on Hassan Erega, with the belief that he will not win, what do you think I'm going to get? I'm going to get a winning bonus. And it's going to be more than 50 plus one that you are thinking of.
Do you think corruption is something that can be defeated in Ghana?
Under Hassan Erega, easily. The first thing I want to assure you, that when I become president, the first day I'm going to sleep in the prison. I'm going to sleep in the cells. The first day I become president, that very night I will not sleep in my house. I'm going to go to the police station and ask them to open the door. I want to sleep in there. Because that is going to be the signal that if the president himself can sleep in the cell, whoever is corrupt, no favor, no fear, you sleep there.
We will eliminate import duties on sanitary pads to improve health conditions, particularly for girls. It's very important, but what we want to really do is to make sure we produce the sanitary pads in Ghana. Until that happens in their numbers, we are going to eliminate the import duties to bring down the cost.
And of course, a lot of promises there from the political parties, the NDC, the MPP. Of course, Hassan Erega has his own promise in there. A lot to get through tonight. If you're making sense of this, I'm very curious to hear how you're making sense of all this, these promises that we are hearing from the politicians. So joining me in the studio to go through this is we have Ora Adams Karim. He's a creative arts social entrepreneur. He joins us in the studio. Hello.
Hi.
Great to have you. Adepa Danso is a debater and women's rights activist in studio. Hello, Adepa. How are you doing?
Evans.
Are you out of school yet?
Yeah, technically.
Oh, I'm interested to hear what technically is. Joining us via Zoom is Efodela. He's a blogger and a poet. Efodela.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, I can hear you loud and clear. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great, thank you.
I didn't know that you were a poet too.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't say I'm officially a poet. I write poems, but I wouldn't classify myself as a poet. Like that's for people who actually have published and things like that.
I'm looking forward. Have you done a poem yet about politicians and the promises they make to us, etc., etc.?
Yes, I do have a few poems about politicians.
Goodness me! Listen, before we end the show, try and find one of them because I want you to do a performance of one of them for me. Is that possible?
Yes, I'll look for it.
Please. So we'll hear Efodela, the blogger and the poet, do as a poem before we end this. Dr. Lomo will join us shortly via Zoom. Julius Kwame Anthony is a student, University of Ghana. Hello, Julius.
Hello.
Hi,
Good
Julius.
Evening.
Good evening. Nice to hear from you. When you're in a university, you are courted by all the political parties. So I'm very curious to learn what your sense is of all these promises you're hearing. Dr. Lomo Kudocha is a political science lecturer. Joins us on Zoom. So, Doc, thank you for your time. How are you doing, sir? Okay. Doc possibly had muted his Zoom. Doc, if you have, please unmute it so we could hear you. Let me come to the studio shortly.
Hello?
Well, yes, I could hear you, Doc. We'll come to you shortly, Doc, and I'm happy that you could join us in this particular conversation. But wherever you are tonight, I want to hear from you because really, everybody else have been treated to these promises over the last few weeks. So please get in touch with your views and comments as well. Join us via social media. WhatsApp is good 0244340437 or just hit me up on Twitter #Noete and I'll share what you've said with the rest of the world. Adepa, let me come to you. So first of all, just give me your general impression of the campaign so far.
It's been interesting, and I was expecting better this year. I mean, it looks like every election year it becomes a banter. Who has the most appealing promises? And I think for so long Ghanaians have been treated like we have short memories, that there's this growing apathy that is making the hunger for accountability less and less, and I think that people are not being as skeptical as they should, and I just hope that this year people will be less blindly loyal and really assess not just the niceness of these policies, but whether it's feasible and reasonable for us as a people.
Personally, what's your take? How are you viewing the campaign so far? Excited by it or what is it? Give me a sense.
Funny.
Interesting assessment.
I'll say funny.
What's making it funny? What's funny about? The stakes are so high. You think it's funny? Interesting. Tell me why do you think it's funny?
People want to sleep in prisons to prove that they are going to tackle corruption. I mean, it's just the same thing, just recycled, and I just think that it's just been branded well, maybe this year, but honestly, I'm just not seeing.
You're not feeling it.
I'm not feeling it.
Karim, what about you? What's your general impression of the campaign so far?
Well, to some extent, I think I'll share in the sentiments of Adipa.
Okay. So your general sentiment is what exactly?
That is the usual, fanfare of promises, and then people promise. People always promise, but at the end of the day, what Ghanaians expect, are not the beautiful promises that you make, but implement the promises that you're telling us.
But they have to promise first before they do.
Well, exactly. But then we have had a feel of these two parties, and so it's more like, but who has really been able to, go to some extent in doing whatever it is that they promise, and so that is basically that usual fanfare of promises that we are having, and then But I mean, so far it's interesting if you ask me, with the way the promises are flowing. And, people suddenly finding certain things really necessary to talk about and hoping that when we give them an opportunity, they will relook at all of these things.
I'm interested. It's as if both of you are saying that you're just enjoying the promise. You're not taking it seriously. You're just listening and enjoying
not necessarily, but you see, Evans, you would agree that in Ghana, a lot of people do not even necessarily vote based on the promises. Because people have already made up their minds who they are going to vote for. No matter what you do, it's not going to change anything. And so there are just a few people like myself and you and and others out there who would really pay attention to promises and vote based on promises and how these promises, affect their lives directly, because it's more of a selfish thing. And so that's basically what it's happening.
Adipa, you have something to say?
Yeah, I think that most at times what happens is that these campaign promises are not explained to the layman's understanding, because if you enter the market and you ask market women, why are you voting for so and so, they can't say necessarily. And that's what I'm saying. There's this huge blind loyalty and allegiance that exists for majorly the MPP and the NDC in our country right now that makes the genuine assessment of policies and feasibility very difficult, because if you are engaging with somebody on an intellectual level to understand the promises of various parties, there's just no engagement on that. It's just where people are.
Very interesting points you're making. I mean, we're going to begin a show shortly called The Voice of the People, VOP, where the microphone is standing in the middle of the street and people just go to it at will by themselves to go and debate. And you go to Mokala, very interesting arguments you're making. As you say, passionate about either NDC or MPP. But what I find is that they know why they're voting for the people. I mean, you may disagree with the reason, but it's a reason for them. Yeah. I mean, let me bring in Dela. Dela, tell me. So, generally, I know you're a blogger, and you watch this very closely, the space. You've been observing the campaign scene so far. Your impressions?
So my impression is that all the politicians are just throwing things at the wall and hoping that something sticks. And everybody is looking for the one promise that they would make that will get the people shouting, hey, 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 hey. And so the opposition party kept on throwing things at the wall until they hit a lucky break on the Okada, which certainly generated a lot of discussions. And the opposition kind of got taken aback by the Okada promises, and then they jumped in and said that, well, they already have this in the pipeline. So what I anticipate is going to happen is that somewhere getting close to the election, the opposition is going to make some sort of effort to legalize the Okada business and then take the seal out of the opposition parties, take the win out of the parties.
Effort the prophet.
Yeah, the opposition party is going to get taken surprise, and then they will have to change their message and say something like, well, we thought of it first. This is going to go back and forth until somebody finds another something that sticks on the wall, and then you start shouting, hey, 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 about it. That's what that's my thought on the campaign.
Julius, do you agree with that? Or you have a different view to what you've said so far?
Well, my personal observation has been that people who are supposed to sort of make intellectual debates become the order of the day have also taken positions before now finding reasons to justify why they taken such positions. For example, speaking of Okada, just like Jela did, you realize that Okada has been going on for a very long time, and then the ruling New Patriotic Party has not made any effort to stop it in terms of it being illegal. But the moment they heard that a certain opposition party wants to legalize it, then you realize that people are coming out with reasons why Okada is so dangerous and it must be stopped and all that. And then because that argument isn't holding, then they are shifting to talks of, okay, we've already thought about it, we've already considered it. This is a situation of people taking positions before trying to find reasons to justify why they've taken those positions, not because they've thought through reasons why things should be this or that way before taking the position.
Yeah, that's let me bring in Dr. Nene Lomo Kuduche on this. I mean, Doc, is that a fair comment to make about the politicians from Julius, that he feels as a citizen and as a student that the politicians seem to think about the nice promise first, throw it out there before they start thinking about how do I implement it, before they start thinking through it. Is that a fair I guess sense of things?
Yes, thank you, Evans. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, so I think it's a fair observation because what you would refer to as promises prior to election are actually political marketing strategies. The scenario we will be looking at is not different from what you engage when you go to the market, for instance. Sometimes people will tell you, 3-400 or 2-400. When you get close, they tell you the one he or she is referring to as 2-400 is actually the one in front of you. When you ask that, no, what about the other one? They'll tell you that one is 1-400. So it's all part of the political marketing strategies of political parties. But it's also fair that normally when you make these promises, the challenge will be how to make them come through after power is won on the basis of the promises that you've made. So yes, I think the observations of the panelists are well grounded.
But there's another sense I get, if you're listening, that there is a general sense of, I don't know what the word is, mistrust, or Karim, correct me. Do I get a sense that you simply do not trust any of the politicians? Is that where this sentiment is coming from?
For me, it's been 6 decades, and you can't blame the people for that growing apathy. So for me, it's not necessarily trust.
Personally, what's your story with that? Are you apathetic now?
A little bit. I'm just fed up.
Oh.
I think there has to be a change, honestly, because we've given these two parties specifically enough time to do something different. It's the same thing. And what saddens my heart is that most of these parties just compare who did it worse. You don't see a party boldly take responsibility for their actions, their failures, and then try to do something different. So for me, it's not necessarily... I think it's a little bit of apathy and disappointment that there's still no breath of fresh air in our political space in Ghana. I
see. Efodela, do you agree with that? Is that your sentiment as well, or yours is different?
So I'm not really apathetic. I'm more frustrated at how things work and the fact that politicians don't actually learn from past mistakes. They seem to do their best to outdo each other when it comes to mistakes. For example, hearing the vice president promise to build an airport in Cape Coast kind of got me a bit irritated because I do not know what sort of feasibility studies they've done to decide that they want to put an airport in Cape Coast. And we have an airport in Ho that I find very, very frustrating because nobody did any feasibility studies before putting an airport in Ho. We don't even have VIP buses going to Ho because the route is not very profitable, but they put an airport in Ho, and there are no airlines that are ready to go to Ho. There's no airline that will find that route profitable. If they fix the route, it will take up 2 hours for people to get there. Accra to the central region is not that far, and I do not imagine that people will be going from there are not enough people going from other regions to the central region for that route to also be excited. And the vice president saying that they're going to put an airport there, I felt it was something he said on the fly, and when he got a reaction towards it, then he decided to hammer it a bit more. And that is very frustrating because it clearly shows that they did not learn anything from the mistakes that the NDC made. A huge amount of money wasted on the airport in Ho that till this day has not been used, and they want to do the same thing in the central region. When fix roads and we have a Ministry of Railway and something, and we don't have anything for that at the moment. Like if they fix good roads, we wouldn't need the central region. And it's very, very frustrating that our politicians do not, like, they just want to put out promises there that get people excited without and the cost of those promises to our financial status as a country.
Okay, so I've heard frustration from you, Efodela. I've heard apathy from you, Adepa. Julius, you belong to any of these, or yours is different from the feelings I've heard so far?
Well, I just feel that the politicians are making us not actually look at nation building from a perspective of what is good for the general public, but what each person can benefit at the moment from it, especially looking at the airport scenario as Dela has cited. What I see is a situation where the ruling government is trying to set up a debate in the central region, especially where looking at it as a swing zone, to dare the opposition party, the NDC, to come in and then debate why an airport is not suitable for Cape Coast. Then it becomes a case of, okay, NDC thinks central region don't deserve an airport. And the people also get agitated about it. Because if you observe the space, you see the likes of Mr. Jacob Alote, who was saying that if the others think they don't need an airport, he needs it. And he just made that statement as blanket as it was, without actually saying, okay, for this or that reason, we need an airport in Cape Coast. Obviously, the politicians' intention is at play. Go and oppose it and see. There are people in the central region who just want an airport. So they will get angry with you. So it's becoming a matter of what we can get from our audience and not what, in terms of nation building, we are doing for the country, which is a very bad approach to nation building.
But I'm curious, Doc, when you say nation building, Dr. Nanomo, when you say nation building, I mean, promises such as an airport, legalize the Okada, that will employ a lot of people, and the others that we've heard, combined, leads to build a nation, right? I mean, do you appreciate the skepticism, the frustration, the apathy that you're hearing from our friends?
Yes, I do. And Evans, within the broad context of what politics with this association with nation building means, even the fact that we are having this conversation is part of the nation building process. If you would get the chance to speak your mind, and if there is no system where one particular view would hold, whether people like it or not, that is what wrecks nation. So even the fact that, let's assume people make loud promises, that's okay. But do we get the opportunity to examine, dissect, and critique those promises? Once we have the opportunity to do so, that in and of itself is a very important aspect of the nation building process. It implies that there is that space for us to express our sentiments. And when we get the opportunity, throw in our little thoughts, participate in the debate that will shape the destiny of this nation. So, yes, frustrations, disappointments, you could even say impatience, is all part of the general processes that in the long run leads to the firming up of the foundations of any entity that you would call.
Observing our political landscape, I mean, Adepa mentioned 6 decades of disappointment. What would you say is accounting for this?
Come again?
What would you say is accounting for this, the frustration, the apathy? etc. that we're hearing. What do you think is accounting for this? Is that what would you say?
Looking at it from the long-term perspective, it is acceptable that Ghanaians will be frustrated, because if you look back into the 1970s and the early 1980s, when I was growing up as a kid, we had to queue. I mean, the whole family had to queue for one cake of Guardian soap, and then 2 cups of rice, and then tissue paper. But now, well, we are not having a conversation about these things anymore, because we have evolved beyond the point where we can take these things for granted. But if you look back, if you talk to your parents or we talk to our grandparents, they will tell you tissue papers were luxury in the 1970s. So we have come very far over the long term. But then, yes, we still have expectations. People have expectations. People have dreams. And if with the dreams that they have, the state does not seem to be responding and connecting with those dreams, you can't fault them if they feel frustrated and disappointed.
Okay, I mean, Karim, let me come to you. You are. Let's go to some of the specifics. I mean, I hope you don't share the apathy and the frustration, or you also listen. You are not frustrated or apathetic.
I'm not apathetic, but sometimes I get a bit disappointed.
Okay.
You know, in the political landscape of our country.
What disappoints you?
You see, I'm a young man who aspires to be in leadership someday. And
as a young man who aspires to be a politician someday?
To be in leadership. Let me put it that way.
No, man, what sort of leadership? Political leadership or...
The reason why I'm running away from politician is because once you mention politician, there's that eye that everyone gives you and says, okay, you're just
clarify.
Going to be one of them.
So clarify. When you say one day you want to be a leader,
I want to be in a position where I can solve people's problems.
Public office?
Yes, public office.
But how can you be a public office without being a politician?
I'm not saying I don't want to be a politician. I agree I want to be a politician.
So why are you running away from the nomenclature?
I'm only saying that. You see, when you mention that now, then everyone gives you...
I get it.
There's that stigma around it. And I try hard.
But but that is an interesting point. That although you desire to lead, become a public servant.
Yes.
I mean, not like a technocrat, but whatever. You're afraid as a young man to be tagged as a politician. But that says a lot, is it not? That those who are currently politicians have somehow destroyed the brand.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That although you want to be in a position that you can help your country, you don't want to be described as a politician.
Exactly.
Is it because of what I said, that the brand politician?
The brand is tarnished. You know.
Okay.
Yeah. If you'd ask me, the brand is tarnished, because when you tell somebody you want to be a politician, oh, you're all the same. You know. Then you say this, and tomorrow you come, and then it's a different story altogether. And for me, it's one of my greatest fear that eventually as a young person you get there and you end up, because people tell you, oh, you get eaten by the system, because we've seen a lot of fine brains get there and then the system swallows them. But we just hope maybe you wouldn't be like them. But then that alone is also enough fear for me as a young man. But then I still have hope that, things can get better, things can change.
So you haven't given up? Adepa has given up?
Well, I haven't.
You haven't given up?
I haven't given up.
What did you say?
Of apathy.
Apathy.
Totally, yeah, because I just think that there has to be a revamp somewhere. Something has to happen. A miracle has to happen. I've not given up.
Okay, but Karim, so let's be fair to the politicians, though.
Yeah.
Let's look at some of the specifics. Not everything they're promising is meant to just, as Dela describes it, throw the thing at the wall and hope it sticks, right? I mean, let's look at you, for example. You are a creative artist, right? You are a social entrepreneur. MP, for example, is promising a lot in creative arts. They want to build theaters, they want to build convention centers, they want to give a platform for people to market their creative artwork internationally and all that. Yeah. That certainly must be something that at least would make sense to you.
Just as I said at the beginning, that every political party presents a manifesto. But what's most important is not the presentation of the manifesto, but the implementation of the plans in the manifesto. In 2016, the MPP promised they were going to build 10 theaters. Where have they got into with that? There's no story to tell. But Evans, when you travel across Ghana, we have cultural centers, and there are theaters in these cultural centers that are rotten. So any serious government who really wants to invest in the creative arts would rather think of renovating and revamping these cultural centers from the ground, from the regional level, and get them to grow and become better institutions rather than thinking of coming to build new ones. To do what? To end up rotting like what we already have. Even sometimes our national theater is pathetic when you walk in. To watch a production and you go backstage and you see some of the things, some of the chairs are broken. It's pathetic. So what new thing are we building? So they end up getting rotten like we already have. Any serious government that is passionate about the creative arts should first and foremost be looking at really renovating and revamping the old structures that we have. That way, then we can say that, okay, we are really doing something towards our creative art. You go to our schools and we don't even see, anything creative art really happening at the basic level. A lot of children in schools today don't even know anything about their culture. Mm-hmm. You understand? And all of these are challenges. How can we revamp our creative art if our traditions, our cultural music, our cultural dance, and in our way of dressing, the younger children do not even know them? Then it's a challenge. Our history, it's a huge part of all of these things. And so if you haven't done any of them and you're talking about building theaters and putting together a creative art council, just to create jobs for people to come and sit and loot and share money and then walk away and eventually nothing happens, then it's useless.
I mean, so it's again the skepticism. But Efodela, let me bring you in. I mean, there must certainly be, not all the promises you've heard, certainly, Efo, you can put in that bracket of just throwing stuff on the wall and hoping it sticks. There must be a few that at least you pay attention to, correct?
Yes, there are a few that I pay attention to. In fact, one of the most exciting things for me has been the infrastructure track the government released. And I feel like they've not even blown a lot of noise about that. The tracker online that you can go and check projects that they promise in your vicinity are going. And I feel like that's something that is a good initiative that the government has put. And they should really making a lot of noise about that. It's a way of being accountable to the people. People can go check if their neighborhood is being done and what level it has been completed up to. If online they can find that the government says that there's a road in their neighborhood and it hasn't actually been completed, then people should have a way of complaining. I don't think there's a way of giving feedback at the moment, but it's a first step that I really like, and I wish the government was making more noise about it and asking people to be more involved in checking their development in their online status. One of the biggest things that I wish for the country was that we had a developmental plan over the years. Like we started with Vision 2020 when Rollins was in power. And when he left, that Vision 2020 was shelved. If that Vision 2020 was carried on, then basically we should be in Vision 2020 by now. But they got shelved when the next party came into power. And after that, they also came up with a plan shelved, and then shelved it. So we don't have a plan for us. But if we have something like infrastructure trackers where we can say that the government promised us this and they've done it, then we can hold them accountable and we can actually say that the development is going the way we expected. And I wish the government was making people more involved in giving their opinions about these things.
Okay, I mean, very interesting, but I'm going to hear what you're saying on social media. But I want to return. There's a question I need to ask all of you, because isn't it your fault that the politicians, you get frustrated? But isn't it your fault? Because invariably, you reward them at the polls. In spite of all the frustration you say you're feeling, you guys, you are frustrated, you are apathetic, everything you say, you still go and reward them at the polls. And so if you reward them at the polls, what do you expect them to do the next time? They'll give you more of what you want. I mean, give to the people what they want. Isn't that what they say? They say you get what you deserve. And so that is what you deserve. All these promises you're throwing because they know the vast majority will like it, will be excited about it. So why do you guys turn around and accuse the politicians of, taking you for granted and, you are just having fun with their promises? Aren't they doing it because there's a demand for this kind of politics where they promise heaven and deliver, you know what? Okay, so a lot of you have joined us with your views and comments on the conversation. Manuel has been pouring through some of them on WhatsApp. Manuel, what are people saying?
Yes, Evans, this one says that, good evening. I believe the NPP has more good things to offer to Ghanaians because comparing the years in power to the other party, that's the NDC, the NPP has good and clear promises. Promises to cut across. This one is from Paul from Kaswa Nyanyano. This one says that, good evening, Evans. Really, presidential candidate sleeping in cells to prove that he is clean, very laughable. The promises are too much. Building harbors and airports at Cape Coast. We are jokers in this nation, he says. Papa Ansa from Teshinungwa State sends that one. This one says, Evans, don't be surprised about the promises of politicians during election year. It's likened to prophecies at every 31st night. Every politician.
I like that analogy.
Every politician at this time wants to show his quote-unquote crotchet powers. Obed Ofori from Volta region, Hohoi, sends that one. This says that, Evans, having heard all the promises from the political parties, I'm convinced by the promises made by John Dramani Mahama, especially on the dualization of our roads and the completion of SHS left in the bushes. Michael from Aputuja. Joseph from Kumasi says, I will vote on December 7th, not based on promises. They are all mirage. Where my thumb goes on that day is final.
Okay, but that's we need to ask, what's his name? Josephine, is it?
Josephine, yes. Josephine from Kumasi.
We need to ask Josephine the question. So if you're not voting on promises, then what are you voting on? I mean, so what? Say that again. Did she clarify?
No, she didn't clarify. She said where her thumb goes on that day is final. I think that
it's final, yes. But if you're not voting on a promise, there must be something
that is making
you must vote based on something. I mean, let's get Josephine to join us on the line to explain this. Josephine, stand by. We're going to call you to explain that because something must move you to make a decision who to vote for. Yes,
absolutely. Evans, a few more of the messages before we call Josephine. This is from Rose from Kumasi. She's asking if we can hear some promises from other independent candidates like Kofi Kranting. Appears the focus was on NDC and PP and Hassan Ayari.
Oh, guys, then you haven't been following the election headquarters because we did a whole debate with the independent aspirants, Ketsi Imani Africa. And so, yes, we did that. In fact, you should prepare for the minority political parties debate as well. So we are bringing diversity to this conversation, not only NDC and PP.
Absolutely. And finally, before we get to Josephine, indeed, it's funny and very insulting how these two political parties are given very enticing promises in this election time, as if we Ghanaians have short memories. And more insulting is the whole VIP and his government telling Ghanaians lies about things they haven't done. The system of comparison is the major problem. We have to focus on I didn't get that. We have to focus on because no one cares about the pass mark as long as they perform a little better than the other.
Great, Manuel. Get me Josephine, because I need to get Josephine's take on this. She's not going to vote on promises, so what is she going to vote on? I'm curious to hear that. I want to come back to my guest. I want to go to Julius first, who's on Zoom. Julius, that question. You are a student of the University of Ghana, correct? I mean, and you're one of those, again, who had issues with the way the politicians are campaigning and all the promises, etc. You seem not to trust them. But the question to you is, I mean, aren't you to blame as well? When I say you, I mean representing the electorate. Because you go to the poll and vote still. You reward the politicians you say you don't trust. What do you expect the next time when you reward them? Don't you take at least part of the responsibility for this?
Well, what I'd like to make you understand is that the politicians control the larger part of the conversation. Take it or leave it. What they set as the agenda of the day becomes what conversations, even the audience, receive or not. If a politician comes to you, one person is promising you free teacher training allowance, and another person is now telling you that, okay, instead of giving you allowances, we want to start building this and this from scratch so that by the time your son will get to teacher training school or all that, he wouldn't need allowance. He would be okay himself. Then the audience go like, I need cash in my pocket right now, and you are talking about now starting something before my child gets to this level. The politicians know very well that they control these conversations and the kind of reactions that will come. Of course, the audience will react. That notwithstanding, the politicians control the larger part of the conversation.
Yeah, okay, so you still are blaming the politician. I mean, Ejapa. Sorry, Adepa. Let me ask you. No, well, the Ejapa one. I've been talking to Ejapa a lot this week, So yeah, but Adepa, what's your answer to that question? Do you accept responsibility as a member of the voting public?
Yes, I think it's a fair question, and that's what I'm saying. That first of all, I think the electorates have very low expectations because you see somebody does something.
Here, I wanted to talk about yourself. Okay. When you say the electorate, you're sort of hiding behind the generic name.
This is the first time I'm going to vote, so.
Oh, this is the first time. You're a first-time voter.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you see. So your point is, blame the others who've been voting before me.
No. But personally, in school, when student politicians come around and then they mention what they want to do, I think for me, I engage them and I ask them questions, and you realize that in that engagement, you see that they have not done their homework. So I think another thing is that is there a platform for ordinary Ghanaians to interrogate, to engage these policies and their feasibility? That's why I agree with Anthony when he says that when they say I'll do A, B, C, D, what is the platform for us to ask the questions, for us to engage aside the media? I mean, when they go for their rallies and then their conventions, what's the platform? But
they will come to your constituencies to come and campaign. The MPs will come. The candidates will come to your constituencies.
For we the electorate, we need to ask questions.
Yeah.
So for somebody like me who is going to vote, I always tell people, my friends especially, that you don't just look at the promise, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. Is this feasible? Is this what the country needs right now? In the next 10 years, is this going to be beneficial? I think we need to start asking these questions. And when we start demanding questions like this, I mean, politicians will sit down and do their homework, because you wouldn't come up with things like building airports in Cape Coast or sharing food that is unnecessary, like the hot meal initiative.
But the hot meal, but that's a good promise, isn't it? Because there are people who won't go to school because they are hungry.
But the students don't even have books to study.
But
the books they have, the textbooks the government says they have.
Where?
I mean, in the schools, they definitely cannot be studied without textbooks.
It's easy to say this when you're sitting in a crowd. It's easy to say this. I don't think what students.
Okay, so if you don't have textbooks to study, they shouldn't eat. I mean, let me bring it up with Dela. Do you accept part of the responsibility as a member of the voting public?
So to an extent, yes, we as an electorate have not demanded more from our politicians. However, our politicians have not been as available to us as we would want. If you remember, I was talking about the infrastructure tracking site, which allows people to have an input in campaign promises. We do not. Hello?
I can hear you.
Yes, we've not in the past had access to our politicians the way we should have access to them. We've not had town council events where people can ask questions of their politicians, because most often times our MPs reside in Accra and our mayors and our district directors are not readily available, so people cannot ask them questions. Also, we are still in a position where a lot of basic bread and butter needs have not been met for people. So people are easily manipulated by things like that. If we were in a position where people could, for example, like access loans to finance their business without struggling so much because we have a good identification system in the country, then people wouldn't be worried about, let's say, bread and butter needs. So if you come and promise somebody like an issue or something like Okada, the person already is in a position to take care of themselves, and like they wouldn't be easily manipulated. So in as much as we take some blame for it, we can't take all the blame because, one, our politicians are not easily accessible. The choices we have when voting are very, very limited. And a lot of the times we do not understand the policies of parties. Because, for example, if we were in the US or in a certain country, you know that the Republican Party stands for this and the Democratic Party stands for this. We do not have those clear-cut lines. We cannot understand the election financing rules. The EC does not enforce them. So people who would be qualified cannot stand for electoral positions because they might not be able to finance it, things like that. So it's a bit difficult to place the blame on the electorate when there is a system that makes it difficult for the electorate to have get some accountability.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Nanolomote on this finally. Doc, do you accept the point that Efodela is making, that you really cannot blame the electorate?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, Evans.
I can hear you.
Come again, the line is spot.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question about how much of the blame should the electorate themselves take? In making sure that they are well informed about these promises before they cast their votes.
Okay, so if you deconstruct what you're referring to as the electorate, maybe at the macro level, you could attempt to find a spot where you fix the blame. But at a very micro level, people have the reasons why they vote for one party or the other. And even at that micro level, others, one of the panelists said that the expectations of Ghanaians are low. I know people who simply vote for one party or the other because the sentiments that they have for that particular party is similar to supporting, let's say, Manchester United or Arsenal. If Arsenal wins or loses, the best they get is it becomes very, very happy simply because that political party or is in power. So answering the question of where the blame should be put would be an interesting question to interrogate. But if we should look at it from the perspective of the fact that our leaders should be the anchor of our development from one point in time to the other, and if you accept that this is true, then to a very large extent they would have to be blamed.
Okay.
But also, if you hello,
yeah, I mean I hear you, but also you can land on that for me.
I'm saying that if we should accept the assertion that the leadership, the political class of any country are the anchors of development, that they would have to shepherd the process of development from one point in time to the other, then we can accept that they would have to account for a greater proportion of the blame. But if we also accept the fact, like what you said, that people get the leadership they deserve, then we have to blame the electorate as well. But again, would vote for one party or the other, you would be surprised to know, not because they expect developmental benefits, but from the emotional upset that comes from knowing that the party that they support is in power.
Yeah, I mean, the very interesting points there. I mean, there's a song that I guess captures the mood of all of you and the hundreds joining us on social media. I want to share with you, and I'll bring in Efodela, who is ready with the poem.
Oh my God. Oh, oh, oh.
say election come where they won't promise us a lot. Let me bring it. Efodela, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay,
with
your short poem. Yes, do the poem over this Two-Face Idibia song. It be like say for me. Go.
Ghana is no place for dreams. 6:45 a.m. A hawker taps tiredly on the rolled windows of a traffic prisoner. For sale, bootleg aspirations, bagged in small sizes, sold at half price or less. On the radio, there's a man talking politics, incoherently, arguing. The glazed-eyed traffic inmate neither hears the hawker nor the man. Ghana is no place for dreams. Thank you.
If you could hear the claps in the studio, you will know they appreciated it. But thank you, gentlemen and lady, for joining us. Adipa and Kariama, I'll see you again definitely in this period of elections. I'm grateful that you connected.